Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's Attorney Collab by Visas.AI. Today is September 22nd, and we're joined by some awesome people. Why don't we start today's collab by thanking all of you attorneys and non attorneys for joining us? Perhaps I can pass the mic over to the first guest today, Zoe. Zoe, would love to know what you've been up to this week, what you're working on, and if you can share with all of us, and just remember, no confidential information, please.
Of course. Hi, nice to be here again. I always enjoy the collabs to listen to what everyone's doing and just to it's almost like a group therapy session, right? All discussing what we're dealing with and any issues we might have. This week for me, it's really just been working with O1 clients, nothing too out of the ordinary. That's more or less it in a nutshell.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Yash, over to you.
Hi, good morning. I'm just working away on H1s again. Most of my cases are H's. Um, there's nothing new in that end. We haven't seen any any new surprises from USCIS yet, so fingers crossed that it'll stay that way.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
what kind of RFEs are you seeing on H-1Bs right now?
Um, Currently we're seeing again a lot of maintenance of statuses. If they're also asking for employer documentation, kind of like if you are a real company or not. That's kind of what they're seeing, just asking for photos of your workspace to see if you actually have like brick and mortar and not like a virtual office. If there's front desk. I guess the underlying thing is this real? Is what they're looking at. Is this company actually real, legitimate? Um, we haven't seen a lot of the double registrations or multiple registration RFEs that everyone was worried about so far. Um, so I'm knocking on wood that it was just, everyone was just worried, and it's not coming. It's not the sky falling down on us right now. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's great. Awesome, Yash. Thank you. John, would love to know what you're working on. I'm sure you've had a very eventful week.
Thanks, Pierre. Yeah, it's great to be on the collab. I think the question of the day is I just is our EB-1s current again? So are we current for?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's September and it's after the 15th. So what that means is that priority dates are now available. What that means is the visa bulletin you can go online and look at is been current, and October 1 is the start of the fiscal year. A lot of people didn't know that or don't know that, but it's not Jan 1 to December 31st. It's really September 1 to August 30th. And so when it hit, we had seen some interesting things that started a couple months back. And the priority dates of the EB-1 went crazy, right? So they backed up for the rest of the world, and India went to over 10 years, which was crazy because India went current for a while on EB-1s to about less than a year. Then it went to about 14 months, and then a couple of weeks ago it went to 10. So unfortunately for Indians, we were hoping that we'd get a big uptick and speed up when the fiscal year hit, but it looks like Indians are now 2017.
They're on 19.
2019. I'm sorry, 2019. So I got to do my math. How many years ago is that? 6.
Six.
6 years.
Six.
So Indians are 6 years out on EB-1s, which is better than 10, but not a whole lot better than 10. And so the rest of the world is current. So we can file means and I was thinking about this when Yesh was jumping into her H1Bs, is sometimes we forget that we might be talking to people that don't do every single day. So to kind of talk about what this all means, a priority date is the time that you can file the adjustment of status or consul for an approved green card, right? So a green card is going to be, if it's employment based, filed on an I-140, and if it's family based, filed on an I-130. So we're talking about employment visas. EB means employment based. EB-1s there's three of them, Mark, for extraordinary ability, outstanding professors and researchers, and multinational executives and managers, right? So the
Mhm.
EB-1, 1, EB-1, 2, EB-1, 3, also known as EB-1A, EB-1B, and EB-1C. All right, so EB-1's extraordinary ability or multinational executives are the main ones we deal with, because unless you represent a university or a research facility, those are the main ones. And it means that if folks of Indian descent or people even born in India that may be citizens of other countries have to wait for their priority date to be current. And this is the one thing where immigration isn't equal, right? So when you look at these priority dates, which are on a thing called the Visa Bulletin that they put out on the 15th of each month generally, for the upcoming month, you look at the country. So a few different countries have different dates than the rest of the world. So, and these are the big population bases: India, China, Philippines, Mexico. Um, those are some of the countries that will have their own designated time frames. How many visas are allotted for them? So we have backlogs for highly populated countries like India and China. So when you have EB2s and EB3s, those backlogs might be 12 to 15 years. So the only current green card, employment-based green card for Indians right now is the EB5 in what's called target employment areas, right? Now, target employment areas are either rural or high unemployment areas, right? Those are called TEAs. And what we have is many times regional center projects that will build their projects in these TEAs and then market to these countries. So right now, the only time that an Indian national or someone born in India can file the adjustment of status at the same time, also called concurrently, is for EB5 TEA regional center projects, right? So we're doing a right now, which is a lot of fun. And one of the things in our firm is that my wife is licensed. Pam is licensed to be able to give advice on which regional center. And it's really interesting because before that was never an issue. So attorneys would always say, "Oh, here's a good regional center," and then they decided, the SEC decided that that was against the law, because while we may know immigration, we're not we don't have the knowledge to give somebody advice on investment, right? That is um, an equity piece, and we can't do that. So um, these investments, you have to be has licensure. She's been in the financial world, and so what she's done is spoken to a number of the regional centers and done due diligence, and she's been advising clients. So we signed up a client this week, and she advised him of a number of different regional centers, and he chose one really cool one in Atlanta, near Atlanta. I'm sorry, it's actually rural in Georgia. That is a project that's really neat. So this allows him to do the $800,000 investment, which is a lesser amount, and adjust his status immediately. And then this gentleman's on an H-1B, and because he can adjust, what'll happen in a matter of months, to get an EAD card. And with an EAD card, which stands for Employment Authorization Document, he'll be able to work for another company besides his H-1B, um, or even his own company. And he wants to be an entrepreneur, and he thinks he can make a lot more money owning a company than working a company. And we see that a lot with our Indian tech clients. And so this is a really good to be able to start that. So while they're investing in somebody else's company, this allows them to have the authorization to work in another company or even their own company and get to where they want to go a lot faster. So that's an interesting thing that also ties in with the EB-1. So we've been able to file or onboard clients to start the process to file concurrently for adjustment of status for the rest of the world, not for Indians, unfortunately, but we have a lot of clients and that we do extraordinary ability EB-1 green cards for. So that's an exciting thing for this week as well.
I love it. Well, thank you, John. Before we move away to our other attorneys and guests, I think it would be great to ask you this question. When it comes to specifically what you've mentioned, EB ones, what does it actually mean, for in simple terms, that some people have to wait and some others don't? So even if you're extraordinary, you
Mhm.
qualify for everything, it depends on where you were born. So where you were born basically dictates for the rest of your life, depending on when you apply, how many years you have to wait after you're approved. When does this wait time happen?
Yeah, Pierre, that's a great question, and I love why we have non-attorneys in here, because, as I was saying, it's really easy for us to get into the weeds and talk about things that we talk about every day, and sometimes we forget the way that people that only do this once would think about it, right? So let me back up a little bit, and I'll explain that a little better. So the priority dates are when you file your I-140 for a number employment-based green card. So that's the form that you send in to immigration. The priority date can be a little bit earlier for the EB-2 or EB-3s that are perms, and those are
Mm.
initiated with a labor certification process that goes to the Department of Labor first, whereas the I-140 goes to USCIS, that's immigration. So the Department of Labor form is the priority date for EB-2s and EB-3s, okay? So that date you file that is your date. It's at your priority date. Now, if your priority date is current, then when you file your I-140, you can concurrently file your adjustment of status. What adjustment of status is the series of forms. It's an I-45, a 765, 131, and medicals that all go to adjust you the non-immigrant or temporary visa that you're in the United States on. So that can be a student visa, that can be an H-1B, O-1, L-1. It can even be a B-1, B-2, right? So you're on a temporary visa. You want to adjust your status to a green card. Then you do that by selecting one of these visa types. If that visa's type's priority date for your country is current, then you can file your adjustment of status at the same time. What that means, this is important to talk about, is with the exception of the H visa and the L visa, which allow you to move freely in and out of the country during that period, all the other visas you have to remain in the United States and wait for your what's called advanced parole, which is your travel document to issue. Once that issues, you can come in and out. Your employment authorization document allows you to work anyway. So really, when you have your work and travel, you have a de facto green card, right? You don't have it yet, but you can do everything you could do on a green card. Matter of fact, you can do everything you could do as a citizen except for voting in a federal election, right? That's the only distinction on what you're able to do. You can work anywhere you want, travel in and out of the country. Okay, so that's what the priority date means. If this priority date has a number next to it, right? So you look at the visa bulletin and it says something like 01 July 2018. Okay, that means they are working on the cases from July 1st, 2018. Okay, so if your case was filed, the priority date was after July 1st, 2018, you have to wait till that date is either the priority date you have or early. Make sense? If it
Got you.
makes
And
sense,
so,
then you're already an immigration attorney because it is confusing
mm,
stuff. And
yeah,
that's
it
and
is
that's what we
confusing.
have to help our clients with, because they don't know that stuff. And there's a lot of things to know. And that's again why
Yeah.
we do these collabs, is we share this information. So if you're only doing, say, marriage cases, those don't have priority date problems, right? Those are immediately available. If you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can file that. And here's the interesting thing about that's an I-130, because it's a family based immediate relative thing. You can file your adjustment of status at the same time. And the interesting thing about marriage, it's the one type of situation that they, if you've worked illegally or overstayed, right? For the other adjustment of statuses, if you
Mm,
worked illegally or overstayed, they'll deny you and kick you out of the country. They'll remove you. But in the marriage case, you can do that. And so that's because a lot of people want to know why. That's because the rights of the U.S. citizen to have their spouse with them outweighs the regulation violation of somebody overstaying or.
okay, I could see how that could, make sense. I think at the end of the day, it's never going to be honestly be fair, right? Nothing is fair when you have to please so many different groups of people
Right,
and
right.
put them all on one same level. But I do think it's a little bit fair that if I chose to have my spouse here and yeah, I'm a citizen, it does make a little bit more sense to why that is. So basically, in another question that follows up to this one, I'm currently in the process of filing my EB-1, and I am a Netherlands European citizen, but I was
Mhm.
born in Syria. I don't see the word the country Syria anywhere on the bulletin.
Right.
What does that mean?
Thank you for that. So what that means, Pierre, is that you are under the rest of the world, right? So if your country isn't named, you're with else, right? So either as a Dutch citizen or a Syrian, you're the rest of the world, and that means that right now, and literally 15 days ago, or I'm sorry, the September 15th and earlier, you would have had to have waited to file because it was backed up, right? But now it's current. So when you file your I-140, you can concurrently file your adjustment of status. And what that means, Pierre, is I happen to know you're on an O visa. You need to stay in the United States so that you don't abandon your adjustment of status.
Right.
And then once you get your travel document, which is also called advanced parole, you can go out and come in. And once you get your work authorization, you can work anywhere else you want to do besides what has been, articulated specifically in your O1.
Love it. It's a very interesting immigration journey, and I love
Mm-hmm.
how my journey aligns with a lot of the things that we sometimes talk about here. So thanks for that,
Sure,
John.
sure.
Well, seeing the time, we're gonna move on to Alex. Alex would love to know what you've been working on this week, and what's in your world.
Oh, thanks, Pierre. And my concern was the same as John raised, that visibility and the dates shift. Particularly, thank you very much, John, for covering it. That's important for all the again citizens from India, which is a lot for EB-1 applicants right now, because very skilled professionals and high caliber. And with that regard, I have kind of a sharing experience with one of our clients who received his I-730 form approved for his family. Literally in 2 months instead of 30 months of advertised waiting time. So that's a great, it was an Afghan citizen eventually. He's petitioned for his family and he was able to do it himself. It's actually a very interesting point without even attorney help. But that's a great news for anyone who's listening, that there is a way to expedite that process. 730, if you have, of course, humanitarian reasons like he had. That's, I think, the piece of information from last week, which I'd like to share with you guys.
Alex,
And
can you help us? Because not everybody does Afghan asylee cases, but can you tell us what a 730 is and what benefit he was asking for?
oh, absolutely. When asylum is being granted, either with USCIS or with the court immigration judge, the beneficiary has, or petitioner has, ability to petition for all his family members abroad by filing I-730 application, and the time for consideration of that form as of today is 30 months, unfortunately, the regular time. And that's what our former client, was able to speed up and expedite to 2 months. And literally, he is reuniting with his family in Pakistan right now. He's traveling to bring them here. And that's the whole process. It's reunification with direct family members for the asylee who got asylum granted.
That's great news. Congratulations.
Oh, that's awesome. Very exciting. Yeah, and it's very different, Alex. Thanks for bringing that up. Our other attorneys, before we move over, Yesh and Zoe, do you have any questions for Alex and what he's working on?
I don't know if I have any questions about that. I'm very experienced in asylum as well. Haven't done it in the past few months really, but that was really my start into immigration.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Zoe. So is it that different countries have different forms, or is the 730 for all asylum cases of any country?
Different countries don't have different forms, but especially with Afghan refugees, it's been a bit different. Maybe Alex could speak more about that.
Yeah. All right.
That's the main reason that citizens from Afghanistan are entitled for that humanitarian expedited consideration of their reunification application with the families, and that's a great news. Whoever have friends, let them find attorney to help them or do it by their own. But USCIS in this case is friendly, for like rarely rare, but it's indeed. I think we have second. I have second example. I don't want to go into details on the same expedited higher processing time, and that's all piece of information I want to share with you guys. Thank you.
Excellent.
I think
Thank
it
you,
opens
Alex.
up again to kind of talk about that there are people that aren't is that don't know this as well, right? So what you both kind of touched on a little bit that we should probably educate folks on is that the Afghan asylums are very specific to Afghanistan. It's called the Operation Allies Welcome, OAW, which was a law that granted expedited for Afghan folks, Afghan allies, right? So this is where politics and other things come into play in immigration. So in this situation, you may recall that the United States pulled out of Afghanistan, and for decades, 20 years about, Afghans had been working with the United States, allies of the United States, to keep the country democratic, right? And the Taliban, who are dictators, right, and oppressors of women, and just really a group of bad guys, for lack of a better word. So when we came out, we offered we being the United States, a different sort of asylum process for Afghans. And what was different about it is a lot of and Zoe could probably talk about this, but a lot of asylum cases, it would take 5 years or so to get onto the docket to hear that. Right now, most asylum cases are people hit the United States and then they're put onto a docket, and it take a long time before they hear their cases, and they can remain in the United States. Although we could talk about this thing, keep them in Mexico. It's a big political football when it comes to southern border asylum cases. But the Afghan cases, here we got allies that were working alongside the United States government and the United States military, or police officers for the Afghans, that were keeping democratic nation, right, and sharing that. So the people that were working with the United States had political philosophies for democracy, for the rights of women, and those things in particular were the basis of them to file successful asylum cases. Now, what had happened is they were dumped into a bunch of different pockets around the country. We live in Oklahoma, and there was a number of them that were living in a hotel. For which sounds really fun for a weekend, but it gets really old as a place to live. One of my favorite stories, maybe favorite days as an attorney, was when we went up with we had 10 immigration attorneys. This is where we met Alex, and he had his firm in California. We had immigration attorneys in Puerto Rico. About 8 spread out around the country. We had the immigration law professor from Oklahoma University, and me, and Alex had flown in to see this. And we went up with laptops, and we had these Afghan interpreters that were in the military interpreting for the other Afghans, that were sitting next to others lawyers or the Afghan themselves. And then the other lawyers were on laptops. So we're using Visas.AI, using our strategy session. We built out a 25-page plus brief on Afghan asylums. And what was really cool about it is most asylum cases are skeletons put in, and then you'd augment it over these years until your caseworker. Well, these cases, they were giving us appointments at the beginning between 30 and 45 days out. So we had to brief everything at the beginning. And then so we did almost 200 strategy sessions with Afghans over this really specialized and different asylum package. And then what was really neat is that we then used the interpreters to help us use our platform to get declarations that were very specific. And what I recall about the Afghans, or one of the things about the Afghans, is they just don't know specifics. They don't dates. They don't know what day something happened. They don't know what month something happened. They just don't care about those things. It's not part of their culture. So it was really difficult when you're trying to plead when somebody did something. It's like, what month was it? What year was it? Was it outside? Well, so, all those sort of things. So we had to get the declarations very specific, and then we had to get witness declarations and all this sort of stuff. And it was really neat to use the platform. Alex has done a great job on the cases he's done so far. Between those lawyers, we're undefeated. We've won every one of them, and but the distinction between Afghan asylum cases and other cases exists in timing and other little nuances are about, right? You got to look at what the differences are. So I think it's important to kind of
it's definitely a completely. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say it is really a completely different experience. I haven't really worked with Afghan asylees so much, but just every other, I suppose, category I probably have worked with, but I experienced that too, where the asylees don't remember things because a lot of their claim is based on trauma too. Right. And when it's happening, they're not thinking about, oh, I need to remember this day. I think a lot of it is a fight or flight, purely survival type of situation, which is why also when you present this case in court, provided they're consistent and they're being credible when they're testifying, there's been a lot of case law that says that even that in itself is sufficient, because when you're fleeing a country under dangerous and really scary circumstances, you're not thinking, let me collect all my documents and my stuff so I can apply for asylum. A lot of the times it's just like, you have to get out of there, Yeah,
that's for sure. There's all those, I can remember those last days clinging to the wings of airplanes.
Oh, that video like gives me, even thinking about it now, I have goosebumps. Yeah. It's so scary.
Yeah. Clients were all the stories of trying to get to the airport, driving the back roads, people who got separated from their wives. It's a different type of immigration for sure. We had one client who's the Taliban went to his house and posted on walking around his house and breaking pictures of him and his family. They'd gotten family members and videoed them, torturing him. Really, it's unbelievable what the difference between an asylum case of people in warring countries and an H-1B visa, right? I mean, it's interesting. It's even the same profession, but
yeah, night and day, night and day.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And guys, some very small comment. I believe this August they closed that ability to file for asylum. You remember, John, that when we sign up the clients, they were stating that they don't have to file within 1 year, which is technically incorrect, but that was an excuse that if the status Operation Welcome is still valid, they were giving them a chance to file for asylum. So I believe August, like months ago, was the deadline. So whoever didn't file probably should file ASAP. And if that's a small advice. That's unique.
Just to specify, though, we are speaking about specifically if you're from Afghanistan, right?
That's right. And let's dig into that a little bit, because this is a great lawyer conversation, because we had this when we were going in, trying to sign people up. Come on, you guys got to go. You got to go. A lot of people were doing these cases for free. We were doing it with an entity that would allow over time. And, we would, we were a pay for fee deal. And well, we don't have to worry about it. They told us not to worry about it. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And I still don't know that we do, because these cases have now been protracted. They started out fast. They were supposed to be done in 150 days. They're not. And a lot of that happened because as a country was on helping Afghans changed to really a lot of political pressure at the border, right? And so these asylum adjudicators that were doing Afghan cases were pulled down to the southern border cases, right? And so this is, an understaffed agency and things like that. But what the law says is that you have to file asylum within 1 year. That's what the law says. The exception to that is for right? Well, one of those circumstances that you could argue is that the Afghans were paroled into the United States. So they entered the United States with an immigration status, right? Which is different than if you cross the American border from Mexico and you say, I'm, being oppressed in my country, right? That's a different way of entering. And so they have to file within a year. There's no question about it. But there's an argument these organizations that were filing on behalf of the Afghans were saying, if you're a parolee, that's an exception to the 1 year. Has it played out yet? Have either one of you seen any of that, or has anybody seen any of does the parolee give you an exception or not? We got all of ours in within a year.
I personally haven't. I would love to know though.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before. For anything else, because it's 1 year from your entry, whether or not it's a B1, B2. I mean, that's what it was previously. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's what the discussion was, Zoe. So here's to Alex. Alex, did you sign up any Afghans after they had been here a year?
Well, I didn't sign up and I didn't file because, John, we stopped intake at some point of new Afghan clients. But I know for sure that was an official excuse later on publicized. After our discussion,
remember, there was USCIS had written something. That's what there was a group, I won't name them, but that was arguing you could, and there was discussion between a number of attorneys that were doing Afghan asylum cases that had said that USCIS is recognizing the parole status to the 1 year. There is an exception of 1 year. It's like, are there exigent circumstances or things like that? And I think parolees fit under that, and that USCIS put something on our website. But none of the cases I have, and none of the cases I know Alex has, did we have that problem. So it'd be interesting to find out.
I would love to know.
Yes, I guess interaction for sure. Those people who filed late, John, wouldn't be granted 45 days expedited interview. Sure. We know that, right?
That was what we were talking about, right? Mm-hmm. That even if you were able to do it, would you lose that benefit of a quicker, interview and determination that the Afghans had? And all those things we don't know. It's just a brand new law. It hadn't been applied yet. It hadn't been tested yet, right? That's the thing. You can read the regs, but then what's their application of it? And we've already seen that USCIS's application of the timing of these cases, that they're not meeting that standard at all. And I don't know if anybody's filed a mandamus, which, now to go back, and I'm using a term that only lawyers would know. Mandamus comes from the word, or it's obviously a Latin word, but mandamus, to mandate, to make somebody do something, is a litigation vehicle that you can sue USCIS and mandate them to do things. That doesn't mean you win. That just means they make a decision. So they can say, oh yeah, you're asking me to hurry up? Okay, hurry up, you've lost, right? So
I have for arranging asylum interviews. It has worked.
Has it? Yeah, I think it should, right? They shouldn't make a decision against you if you just make them do things, but they're people. And they can be mean-spirited people. And I was leaning, one way or another. I wasn't quite sure, but now that you're going to mandate me, we're going to go ahead and terminate this, right? Deny this. So anyway, I'm just, that's the concept of why people
John.
are hesitant
I'm going to have to. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to take over a little bit because we're entering the third section of our collab today. So before we move over to a little bit more of issues in Visas.AI, I do have a question for all the attorneys here. So someone said, I'm heartbroken, my case has been denied. So I got a call back from a tier 2 officer. She said my TPS and work permit are denied. I told her that I asked her what was the reason, and she said she doesn't know, but I'll get a letter soon. I then called the contact center, and they said that my case is processing normally. I don't know who to believe, and I don't know what to do. Obviously, in this case, and in any case, we recommend that they contact an immigration attorney as soon as possible, because a lot of people submit their TPS on their own. But other than that advice, what do you guys think?
I'm sorry, did you say this person received a phone call saying it was denied?
Yes, I got a call back from a tier 2 officer saying that my TPS and work permit are denied.
I've never heard of anyone calling on the phone. That sounds like a scam.
Definitely
Possibly.
does. That
Really?
I've never had that happen.
Did they ask him
That's
for money? Was it a
that's crazy
Nigerian
because
prince?
then she then called the contact center and they told her that her case is processing normally.
Exactly. That sounds like possibly it could be a scam. I mean, I would wait and see if she's not received a notice or anything, but always just call the main 800 number, I think, to double check. Because you never know. These scams are getting really wild
really,
these days.
Yeah, that
But
sounds
do we
weird.
recommend that the TPS is done without an immigration attorney?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, do we recommend people to is if they hire an immigration attorney through this TPS process, wouldn't it be much more organized so they don't have to go through all these different, scams and
Oh, no, absolutely. I always recommend personally for any sort of legal work to speak to a professional. Whatever it is, we all have our different skills and we're all knowledgeable in different things. I hire an accountant every year. Like I wouldn't trust myself to do my own taxes. I definitely think if you're experiencing any sort of immigration issue or even a question, you can reach out and speak to a licensed immigration attorney.
Yeah, I think Pierre, something to say here. Look, we're a collection of attorneys. This is what we do for a living. I don't think suggest anybody do any legal process without an attorney. You can do them. You can represent yourself in court. You go to the Supreme Court and do that if you want. Obviously, as Zoe said, you can file your own taxes. You can incorporate your own company. But these are legal processes, and man, it's about it earlier today. I think immigration started, you know, fairly easy. You put in a table of contents, you give things. What we've discovered is that these agencies have gotten tougher and tougher. In my career, a lot of the visas that were very simple have gotten more complex. H-1Bs, for example, have gotten much more complex. We're seeing consulate all the time on 221Gs. If they had attorneys, they would not have made the same mistakes. It doesn't mean you're going to guarantee approval. But what an attorney brings to the table on these things is experience. And what experience isn't always just the strategy knows, but having enough data points that they've tried various things. I all the time hear people that will look at the regulations and say, I meet the EB-1 because this is my award, this is this, and this is that. And I'll say, I can see how your brain went there, but you don't have any experience on how you're saying has been adjudicated in the past by these bodies. And I will tell you that I can see how you think winning the engineer or computer scientist of the year for your university because it was for a national body you think is an you I have enough experience that they're not going to recognize a based award because they don't think that you're in the industry yet. They think you're studying to be in the industry. And that's where attorneys come in. They have experience, they have data points, they see these things day in and day out. They know what's black and white in or out where the gray areas are. And attorneys play in the gray areas, right? We know, okay, that's a really good argument. We know that sometimes you can win this, sometimes you can't. But if you do it this way, you have a better success rate. So there isn't any one of these processes that an attorney would not be better than somebody that doesn't do this for a living or has only done it once or never before is
right.
going to do it.
You got it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, John. So
Sure.
the rest of our agenda today looks like this. We have a question specifically for Yesh about H-1Bs, And then right after that question, we're actually going to move over to Gabby, who's going to tell us all about the new features of Visas.AI in the recent update to the platform. Yesh, there is a question that says, "Hi, me and my partner got married a year ago. He has a green card and we filed for an I-30 for me 10 months ago, and it's still in process. I'm starting my postdoc in the US and I can choose between a J1 or an H1B. Which one will be better for my condition? Can you please help?"
I feel like this might be a question as well for John, because he's done a lot of, or he has a lot of experience with the Jays. But you said she's married to a U.S.
Yes.
or
Well, actually, she doesn't mention that. She just says, "Me and my partner got married a year ago. He has a green card, and we
okay.
filed for an I-130 for myself 10 months ago, and it's still in process. I'm starting my postdoc in the US, and I'm curious between which one to choose, a J1 or an H1B."
If she's sorry, I'm trying to think. If she's, or if the spouse had filed for an I-130 10 months ago, it might. When is the
Because he's a green card holder, it's going to take
Yeah.
longer, right? So honestly, my recommendation to get status as quickly as possible, if that's ultimately the goal, is once your partner is eligible to become a US citizen, do that, and then hopefully you're able to change and move up a category where there are no visa numbers allotted for immediate relatives of US citizens. Again, I'm not the person that really deals with H-1Bs so much. That's more Yesh and John's area. But I mean, just since I'm speaking now, I would say whatever you like. It just depends, right?
There is a little caveat, because the H, if they've never been afforded an H, or if they've never had an H before, then they would have to go through the lottery. And so unless, that's what I was trying to see, unless they're, getting a job in like a cap exempt organization, they're gonna have to wait till October of next year to see.
And you might not be chosen as well, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that lottery is very difficult right now. We've seen this year it was like 1 in 14 chance, if I'm not wrong, John.
Yeah, about 14%.
Yeah.
You guys are doing great. This reminds me of fact patterns in law school, Pierre, and what it really needs is a one-on-one strategy session with an attorney, and I'll tell you why, right? Because these folks have, you guys did a great job appealing some of the issues, but there's still other issues out there, right? So number one, is the spouse a permanent resident? That's the first question. I think you're right. The spouse is a permanent resident, meaning that being married to a permanent immediate, they're going to have a priority date, so they need to be visa. H or J1 opens the question: have you ever had an H? If you had an H before within the last 3 years, then you can file a new H and not be subject to the numerical cap. However, if you hadn't, then you are subject to the cap, but there are some cap exempts. So if that H is going to be part of the university in which they're coming to study, or a postdoc, they might be able to get an H working for that university while they then go to school, because if you're on an H, you can go to school too. But the J opens up a whole nother. J, one of those instances where not all countries are equal. So the J has a skills list, and the skills list, it's a 2009 skills list, and attorneys that don't know to look at this can really, really hurt their clients, because some J's are subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, which means after the J ends, you got to go home for. The one thing that a married to an American have here, but it's assumed it was an American citizen, or they become an American citizen within couple of years, right? Which they might, if you're a permanent resident for 5 years on employment base or 3 years on marriage base, you could then move to citizenship. So say this permanent resident becomes a citizen, and that way they can move up this green card, as Zoe said. If this person's on a J visa and subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, they can't even just change to American citizen unless that American citizen has some sort of major concern, which is usually health, sometimes employment. So it's not as simply as just being married to an American. So I would then say, okay, what country are you from in the J? What are you coming in to study on the J? I'll tell you some J's, everybody is subject. For example, medical students, right? They're foreign medical graduates, or I think they're now called international medical graduates, or IMGs. The United States is trying to do is not, suck all the doctors around the world. We need doctors to be going home to their country. So they're forcing doctors to go back, right? And so if she's coming to get a J to be at a medical school, she's going to be subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. So look at all the different potential issues that are in that question. And here's what happens. People shoot those emails out. A lawyer doesn't think through all of them. You go pick which one you want. Next thing you know, they're on a J1. They do it on their own, and subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. So, there's a lot of issues in some of these things, aren't there?
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for that knowledge, John. The last section of today's agenda is actually we're going to go over to Gabby, and then John, of course, please feel free to comment on Gabby's new updates.
Yeah, I can't wait.
But Gabby, I'd love if you could please introduce your role at Visas.AI, a little bit about what the company does and what the platform does for immigration attorneys for now. And if you can maybe update us on the new recent changes and updates to the platform.
Yes, thank you so much, Pierre. So I'm just really excited to be here on this collab. I'm another non-attorney. However, I've been raised by an attorney. John is actually my father, so we have a family business here. My brother works for us too. My great-grandfather was an immigration attorney, so I'm really passionate about this whole industry and helping just immigration get better as a whole. My official title is the Director of Business Development, but we're a startup, so I wear a lot of hats. But my favorite part of the job is just getting to interact and meet other immigration people in the industry, immigrants themselves, and just work towards something that's bettering, I think, the collective. Moving on to Visas.AI, we have some really exciting new developments. We now have the ability to kind of manage all of the corporate strategy for our corporate immigration partners that we work with. So the companies that are doing a high volume of visas, where in the past we kind of had to have individual profiles for each beneficiary, now we can kind of manage them all under one umbrella, and we can reference the corporate strategy. So when John does those initial strategy sessions with the CEOs, we can now pull from that and bring it across every case. So that allows us to continue to service our corporate immigration clients better and make sure we have uniformity and consistency across the board. A really exciting update that we've been waiting for a long time. Now we have the ability to translate a lot of our questions into, I think, hundreds of other languages. Whereas we were just having everything in English, we've now integrated with Google Translate. And for any of our clients going in to enter their information in the platform, they can now designate it into their own language and kind of have a better understanding of the questions they're answering. So those are two big things that have just been released this summer, and we're just really excited to roll those out across the board. So if I have any attorneys tuning in to watch this and you want to see how you can use our platform to better your practice, please reach out to me. My information will be I think somewhere in the comments. I'm sorry, I'm not sure where it will live, but I'd be happy to talk to you. You can also just go to our Visas.AI website and schedule directly on my calendar. So any questions you guys have, please reach out. And John, I'll kick it over to you. You can expand a little bit more, and you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like you to show them, like, go to a strategy session and do the that's Visas.ai. Go to online app.visas.ai and go to a strategy session and show the changing of the languages. I mean, it's fascinating. It's their language. It's in the alphabet, right? So changing it to Tamil, one of the many Indian languages, or Telugu, or Hebrew, or any of the Cyrillic languages like Russian or Ukrainian. It's really neat. now the answers still have to be in English, but when we're doing these strategy sessions just like this, right? We got different faces on there, and we've had translators. So what it's been in the past is I would say something, the translator would say something, they'd come back and I'd have to answer it. But if they're actually reading the question in their language, then I can type the answer in English, and it's really neat. So Gab, if you could show that.
Sharing now. I just had to get logged in. One moment, please.
Yes. We had to make sure that you can't see real people's information.
Okay. It's loading here. I believe this live stream is making my computer go a bit slow. Apologies. One moment. I'm just going to give it a second to get loaded here, and then I'll.
In the meantime, I'd love until you do that, Gabby, it would be great if we can. So I just want to understand this feature. So when it comes to the questions, you'll ask me the questions, let's say in Arabic, and then I'm answering them in English because at the end result, it has to be in English, right? It doesn't matter how it's translated to me as the petitioner. The end result to USCIS has to be in English. So that's why the questions change, but the answers remain in English. Correct, John?
So I can answer that question. Yes.
Yeah.
So at this time, currently, you do have to answer the questions in English. But our next phase, after we've gotten this first thing up and running, our next step will be to have translation from the other side. So the first step is just getting the questions translated to the language, the native language, and then coming down the pipeline is the ability to answer in your native language and it be translated back the other way. So I've got my screen up here sharing now. So what I've done is this is our case menu for a new lead. So this would be for somebody who has not yet engaged the firm, but they are exploring and they're doing an initial strategy session with their attorney. This is the attorney view. So we've got, different stations for the different functions within the platform. But we're talking specifically about the strategy session. So what our attorneys do here at Online Visas, they create a strategy and they share the screen just like I'm doing. And we go through the questions with the client. That way it fosters a sense of trust. You can see what we're typing. Where everybody's on the same page. We talked a lot about H-1Bs today, so I'll just go ahead and pick our H-1B questions here. So like we said, we've got this native integration with Google Translate now. So I can select any language here and translate it. So we were talking, here we'll go ahead and choose Telugu. So now we see that it's translated into Telugu with the alphabet.
Wow.
And go through and have the questions be populated
Very
that
cool.
way.
And
Yeah,
I
it's
think
fantastic
it's
to see that.
supported by Google Translate. That's a very powerful translation medium.
Yes.
It is, and did you show the drop down, Gabby? Can you show all the different languages available?
Absolutely. We've got tons.
Oh, I can't see it.
So if Google updates something, then this will automatically get
Yeah, it's really cool. The integration basically uses the intelligence powered by Google. So as they improve, as new terms come into place, it will automatically. I didn't know Hawaiian was a language.
I didn't either.
Oh yeah, it is.
Just say that to a Hawaiian.
learning.
I used to live there for 5 years. It definitely is a language. Yeah.
And how do you say it? Do you say Hawaiian or Hawaiian?
I mean, they say Hawaii, but I don't say that because I'm not Hawaiian. I don't want to butcher it. I'll just stay extremely American with it.
Yeah, that looks like Arabic, but because it's Persian, it's the same alphabet, but it's a different language.
I actually had the opportunity to use this feature yesterday for someone who asked me if I could speak French, and I said, no, I can't, but I can do this. Yeah.
How did it go, Zoe? Did they like it?
It was very helpful because we weren't able to communicate, but there were just some connection issues on their side of things. So we're arranging another time to speak with better connection. But it was helpful because I don't speak French either.
Yeah, our whole main goal here is to make this more accessible for our clients and We just want this to be a tool to allow our attorneys to help more people get their visas approved. So we're really excited about this change. I think this is one of the biggest things we've dropped this summer, and I'm just excited to unveil what's next.
I think it's really helpful for attorneys too, because I can speak Mandarin, right, and read it and things, but I mean, I don't speak Mandarin every day. There are times, especially when it comes to legal terms, I can't think of it right away because I'm not thinking with business terms when I'm speaking Mandarin. It's usually more casually when I speak, so it's been helpful for me too.
Yes. Well,
Change it.
oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing my screen. Well, I think we're actually about over our time here, but I'm excited that you guys got to see a lot of the languages we have. And I'm, like I said, really excited to share with you guys what's next coming down the pipeline that I can't exactly speak about yet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gabby. I'm going to hand it over to John for our closing remarks, and then we're done for the day.
Yeah, go back, Gabby, go back to the screen. I want to talk about it real quick. Organizations, and tell you why we pulled that in. So when we're doing our H-1Bs, it was massive, right? And so we represent a lot of staffing companies. Staffing companies waited to the last minute of the 90 days to be able to give us their information. So we had like nearly 200 companies all onboarding at the same time. And what we had to do to handle that is have different, case managers reaching out to these companies and asking for the same things over and over again. And, it was what we had to do to get it done. We ended up doing 80 H-1Bs in one day, right? And the technology did it. It was great. We had 100% approval so far, knock on wood. And we had 4 layers of quality control in being able to look at this. So in online visas, we don't go over it all right now, but you can upload documents, you can put the whole case there. So it allows us to have somebody assembling a case in India, reviewing the case with attorneys in America, assembling it here, and then sending out, because obviously we couldn't have sent it out. It would have been too cost prohibitive and time consuming in how long it would take to do that from overseas. But it really allowed us to be an international firm of different professionals working on it. So what we developed with organizations, as you were talking about, is the ability to have a global strategy session for the company. And you could even have multiple ones, right? So you could have one global strategy session for this type of job, one global strategy session for that type of job. And think of it in different visas. So H-1Bs could have multiple positions, but L-1As could have the manager executives, and L-1Bs could have the specialized or essential employees, and be able to do that and track it across. So what's really neat is you can also upload all the documents, right? So you have one sort of master session, and then when you're doing the individual cases, you can then copy it, right? And then you can even update the master session if you want to change it. So say, for example, while you're representing a company, they win a big award, or they change what they're doing, or they have a new type of job. Bam, you can change that, and you can change all the other cases going forward, and even going backwards if you want. Or you can say, we want to keep the ones that we did historically the same way we've done them. We want these to do that. And that is a really cool thing. We just did a training on it in our company the other day, and it's a cool thing.
Yep.
That's what I got.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's collab. We'll see you here next week, every Friday. Our attorneys, thank you for joining. Our non-attorneys, thank you for joining. I'm a non-attorney, but I love speaking to you guys every week. It's the highlight of the week. Love asking questions. Next week, I'm going to come with a list of questions to ask to challenge everyone. I loved the best thing that we did today. I asked Tiesh and Zoe, and they were able to chat and just brainstorm all these different ideas.